We're gonna call the meeting to order at 4:05 on Wednesday, August 20th. And I just wanted to start off by saying, welcome back to our teachers. Today was their first day back. Hope everybody had a great summer. And also wanted to give some appreciations to the folks who have been working in our buildings all summer long, the custodians, the administrators, the support staff who, thanks to their hard work, we are ready for the to formally begin the school year by welcoming our teachers back today and our students in a week. So very excited for the school year to start. And with that, let's do our first order of business, which is public comment. We don't have anyone in the room. Is there anybody online who would like to submit public comment? Okay. So then our next order of business is the consent agenda, which is the sort of pro forma agendas and minutes of other meetings, just kind of the typical stuff that's pretty non-controversial. If there is anything that a board member wants to pull off the consent agenda, we can do that for discussion. But let's start by seeing if there is a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll move that we approve the consent agenda.
Great, thanks, Jake. Is there a second? Awesome. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? All right, consent agenda passes. On to board business. Libby, I think we were gonna get a quick update.
Yep.
Before we kick it over to Tracy. Okay, great.
Rhett,
Rhett and Jill, welcome.
give them a second. to
We'll get,
come
yeah,
sit
let's let
down.
them sit down and settle in.
All eyes on the two of you.
No pressure whatsoever.
New swag, Rhett, I made sure I gave you one and the twins one each. One for your kiddo.
No need to
and
share.
you. There's no need to share here, no. One for Natalie, one for Jill.
Oh my.
Everybody's children got something. Tim, don't worry, we have some for your kids too. All right, we read that.
Great.
So the purchase and sale agreement is technically in the hands of the Roxbury Select Board right now. I got some emails from Mark, our lawyer, today. They had some questions about what we had just sent back to them. Right now, they're asking for clarification as to an amendment we are looking for around repairs and choosing whether the district pays for repairs that an inspector may find or not. We are also looking at putting the PCB levels, if they're testing them, at the EPA level instead of the Vermont school level. And the select board is asking for clarification as to why we put those pieces in. They did say something in a response back in an email of the select board has already said that they would not ask the district to mitigate if PCBs were found. And that's the first time I've heard that from a select board or from their lawyer. So Mark and I are gonna check back on that, then let's get that into some language because I don't believe it's currently in the purchase and sale agreement unless I've missed it, which is also a possibility. But so we need, if that's the case, then we need to get that into some language, but the lawyers are currently going back and forth with clarifying language still around those two issues mainly.
Repairs and PCBs
Yes.
are the two main issues.
Yes.
Okay. And in the question from me, in the current draft, the closing date is like November 1st. Is that right? Okay. If it were to be signed by both parties.
Is the PCB test like a binary thing? Like, does it exceed some levels, or is it where they actually tell you a number?
They tell you a number, and I'm gonna look at Casey for more confirmation because she's more of a, yeah.
So that number could compare to our state numbers, which are much lower than PCA numbers. But if we're not mitigating.
Right, yeah, that's my question. That was my, like, if we're not responsible for mitigating, then okay, like that's that's fine, but we don't have that in language in the contract right now.
Yeah, it's, I'm wondering why we need, what's the relevance of the state or federal levels? If you don't need mitigating, like, don't you just kind of want to find out the numbers?
Yeah, that was the first, I've heard from Brett around the not asking the district to mitigate any PCB findings, but that's not in any kind of legal documentation that I've seen. So if that's the case, for real, I don't know what other way to put that, then just let's get that language in the contract is where I'm kind of
The
at.
purchase
And
and sales.
exactly,
Mhm.
and then it doesn't matter whether we use EPA or the Vermont law for schools. So I think that's kind of where they are right now. Sorry, my back was too this.
Any other questions about the status? Okay. And I think that's it for the RVS to update. And-
Almost there, I think.
Any other updates you want to give us before we turn it over to Tracy? You had mentioned in your superintendent's report, the task force, the consolidation task force.
Yeah,
met
that met yesterday.
Is now a good time for that update? Is there an update?
There isn't really anything to
Okay.
update. It was, we'll never get those hours back of listening to the task force yesterday.
Was it really a 6-hour meeting?
Yeah.
Cause I remember from their, yeah, wow.
Yeah, Tracy and I were talking about in the beginning of it. And then we came back to it and it's all, yeah.
Okay.
They're still. I think the nicest way to put it would be they're fumbling through trying to find their direction because they
Yeah.
have a really hard task.
Yeah.
So
That's
there
also a
isn't-
true thing to say.
Yeah, there is no real update.
Okay.
They're waiting for data and they're waiting for a consultant to help them out.
Okay.
Which they need.
Yeah. All right. Well, then I think we'll turn it over to you, Tracy. Yes, please, because then we have the mic and that can pick up.
I'm intrigued by the
I'm
elephant.
very intrigued by the elephant.
Famous for having a mousy voice, so I hate microphones.
It's not gonna make you louder. It's just gonna pick it up for Orca.
Well, if you can't hear me.
And I want to make sure they can hear you. Are you good?
Great. So, hello, my name is Tracy Wren. I am a Vermont educator who has been serving public education for 36 years. 32 years of that was full-time public education service, with 14 of that being as a superintendent. And the last 4 have been less full-time, but still very busy, consulting and coaching and working with educational leaders on a wide range of projects, including the project that I am nearly completed, at least this phase for you, which was an informal study of, you called it feasibility study, around a possible merger between MRPS and Washington Central, and perhaps maybe even other partners in the region. This is the 7th time I've been an active participant in a process for considering governance changes, leading to recommendations for and not to make the changes, and on rare occasions leading to actual changes in governance. So it's not new to me. I also want to say thank you to your for your commitment to learning. One of my favorite quotes is from Louis Pasteur: "Chance favors a prepared mind." I really respect and admire folks who study and learn as much as they can so that they're prepared to capitalize on opportunity when those opportunities arise. So I appreciate you doing that. Want to thank the administration for their support with the work. As you can imagine, there was quite a bit of behind the scenes work for them to provide data and information, and they were fabulous in helping me with that. And just generally say I appreciated learning more about your districts. So my goal tonight is to provide an introduction, sort of an overview of the informal report. I can answer questions you have, or identify those that we might need to do some follow-up to get the information you'd like. I really just want to leave you in a better place to continue your conversations, and work related to governance in whatever directions you see fit. And I'll foreshadow, and probably say this several times. Preliminarily, I see three possibilities for the usefulness of the report, and I actually say it in the report too. The information might be useful for advocacy and engagement in the current work of the legislature around possible governance changes. It could be useful for implementation if the legislature enacts a new governance structure. A lot of this information can really help you plan. Or perhaps if there is not a new governance structure and that's developed and imposed by the legislature, it may give you some solid footing to explore collaborative opportunities on a voluntary basis as you're thinking about how you manage the challenges that will still be present in terms of fiscal pressures. I know you have some facilities pressures that you're thinking about as well, and there are, of course, demographic challenges that are impacting schools everywhere as they plan for declines in enrollment. Superintendents and board chairs are planning also to ensure that the report is available publicly after the meeting with you today. I'm actually also going to pop into Washington Central. They have a meeting later tonight, so it will be available in both communities by the end of tonight. And I will be having a similar conversation with them on September 3rd, so in a couple of weeks. My plan is to walk through the highlights of the report, and then so that Mia and Louie can participate fully, I'll facilitate some beginning discussions of your initial responses to the report. Not only will they be participating, but they'll be seeking to capture highlights or key ideas that emerge from your discussions that could inform plans for future work. I just want to emphasize this is a starting point for discussion, and just want to hopefully develop some shared understandings. Not the end, not the last chance for conversation. So questions about the process tonight? Yes.
No question, just to add on to what you just said is that we have a meeting on the calendar with our counterparts at Washington Central for mid-September as the next step after both boards have had a chance to receive this and digest it, just again to continue the conversation, just so that the board knows that is a next step that's already planned.
Okay, I'm going to invite you to grab the hard copy of your report. And I'm literally going to walk you through some of the highlights. They're the things I thought were highlights. You may have different highlights, and there'll be plenty of opportunities to dive into all of those, but we'll start with the things that I identified myself as potential highlights.
Sorry, Tracy, to interrupt you before you get started. And then just for anybody who's watching this either right now or later, the recorded version, if you go to the board packet, if it's not there already, we apologize, but it will be as part of our wrap up in minutes. So if you're watching this later and you want to be like, well, Tracy just mentioned page 6. I wish I knew it was on page 6. You should be able to find the PDF of this report there and be able to follow along at home.
Yes. For you, where you have hard copies in front of you, I invite you to mark it up. Underline things that you think stand out for you as potentially significant. Note areas where it's confusing or you have questions or may want more information. And you can jot down thoughts about possibilities for advocacy, collaboration, any next steps that you think might be worth bringing forward down the road. Feel free. You can have more copies later if you'd like. So I'm going to turn to the report. And the first thing I want to say is this is an informal study report. Vermont law on forming unions also speaks to preliminary study. And that's what this is. There are processes in law for formal study, and this is not that process. So just make that clear in the beginning for anybody who's wondering. You are not engaged in a formal merger study process. Want to invite you to turn to page 4 with me, which summarizes the purpose of this report. The purpose, as I described it, is to outline information to inform consideration of a hypothetical merger to form a unified union between MRPS. Is that how you refer to yourself? Okay, I want to use the right vocab. And Washington Central in today's context. So I want to be clear that the report does not include an analysis of pros and cons, or a recommendation for that matter. We know that pros and cons are very subjective, and what is a pro and what is a con might differ from individual to individual or community to community. And even where everyone agrees something might be a pro or a con, the weights might vary. We also know that changes in governance don't necessarily translate directly to changes in opportunities for kids or changes in important things that you pay attention to, like expenditures. Really, changes in governance provide opportunities that enable boards and communities to make choices about changing that can impact those things going forward. But really, the outcomes will depend upon the choices you actually make and the context, the Vermont context for education generally, that impacts those choices as well. That said, it can be useful for discussions about pros and cons, the information, and help you think about possible opportunities and potential impacts. I have to do a disclaimer that I am not an attorney and this is not legal advice. I also wanted to point out in my opening highlights that this study started in April before the current legislation, Act 73, what was H 454, was completed. So someone might wonder, well, what's the point now that the legislature is in process of potentially mandating new governance structures or enacting them? Should use less, more neutral term.
There you go.
There you go. And say again that the contents of the report could be useful to you for advocacy in that policymaking process. If new structures are enacted, helping with transition planning and finding those opportunities potentially. And of course, again, if new structures aren't enacted and you're still challenged with providing better outcomes for kids and bending the cost curve, you might have some information to help you look at collaborative ways to do that. I'm going to turn back to the table of contents on page 2 and just tell you what's in here. The first section, from the purpose to a brief history of the two districts, is really contextual information. The next section talks about options for a merger between MRPS and Wash Central. There is a comparison of the articles of agreement. And then the largest section of the document perhaps is current considerations for a possible new union between the districts. This is the data, most of the data that would be required for a governance study and creation of articles of agreement if you were engaged in a voluntary process to consider formation of a new union. Not quite everything, but it's most of what is needed for that. And again, it's useful for all three purposes we talked about if you decide you want to use that. I include just a preliminary list of possible areas for additional study. There are many, many more, but to spark your thinking, if you decide you want to go in that direction. And the last thing in the report, which is not numbered page-wise, is the source documents for the articles governing MRPS and Washington Central. So your warnings and your current articles of agreement. So it's handy there in case you ever need it. All right, so with that overview, I'm going to walk you through the report and spend time on some potential highlights or takeaways that might be useful for you right now. Turning to, I'm going to start on page 5 and just explain that this section on education governance in Vermont provides a few key definitions with the language in law, and then my explanation in less legal terms of what this structure is and does, and some contextual examples that you might be familiar with. It's important to understand that districts with similar governing structures and operating structures are a little bit easier to merge if districts have different operating instructions. As Vermont law stands right now, the electorate would have to agree upon a common operating structure as part of forming the new union as well. Of course, that could change. The example of that would be Roxbury joining you. They also, at that time, agreed to change their operating structure, no longer pay tuition for students, and all students attend school in the district. So it's doable, just has more steps and a little more community engagement and planning involved with it. Want to highlight the policy objectives for education governance in Vermont. These come from Act 46 and the subsequent revision of the section of law that speaks to forming unions, which is Chapter 11. The policy objectives in law are in bold at the top of page 7 and say that formation of union school districts shall be designed to encourage and support local decisions and actions that provide substantial equity of educational opportunities statewide, lead students to achieve or exceed the state's education quality standards, maximize operational efficiencies, promote transparency and accountability, and be delivered at a cost that parents, voters, and taxpayers value. I would say that I reviewed the policy statements in Act 73, and they might be of interest for bodies considering governance and engaging in advocacy as well. They're not directly applicable to voluntary mergers at this time, which is kind of my framework, given where we were. But they could be useful for defining more clearly what some of those things mean. Thinking just, for example, about the class size rules that you will have to comply with. That might help to define some of those elements, for example. And of course, more clarity could come out of the upcoming session as well. The report includes that brief history of MRPS and Washington Central. I got much of the history from a 1990 study of the feasibility of a merger at that time. It points out that there was a merger study, a union study. I wouldn't say a merger study. Formation of a union high school was studied in the 1960s. That happened all across the state. And along with that, CTEs were also
Mm.
created as
Mm.
part of that process. In this region, there was kind of a bumpy process. And the narrative is a little confusing to me, but there was an affirmative vote to form a union high school, which included all of the towns but Berlin of what is now Washington Central and Montpelier. And the plan was to have a union high school where kids from Montpelier and all of those other towns attended. And Montpelier would be an elementary district like Washington Central used to be. So it was going to be a supervisory union. So that was approved. Then Berlin voted to join. Then there was a petition by Montpelier to withdraw. And then there was another petition to rejoin. And when that petition to rejoin was brought back to the rest of the towns in Washington Central, they said, no, we don't want you after all.
Can you imagine if there was front porch forum right there?
Yeah.
Imagine what that would have been like.
So Montpelier did withdraw in that period at some point.
Yes.
Yes,
Vote count, and.
Yeah.
the differential.
Yeah.
Mhm.
What's their like, ask them what's the-
Yeah.
And there was a bond vote during that withdraw, join that failed. So after Montpelier was out and Berlin was in, they voted the bond to build U32 was approved, and the structure that you are familiar with now was essentially created as a union, supervisory union.
And our high school students at the time must have been going to what's now the middle school. Cause I don't think, cause this building must not have been.
Yeah, I could revisit
Who knows?
the study narrative to get the details.
Yeah.
Our kid, I think, used to go to the school on Berlin Street.
Whoa.
The elementary school.
Oh. Some of them.
Yeah.
For high school.
No, I think that was the elementary school.
That was in the days of junior high too, not
Right,
middle
yeah,
level.
Right,
so
right.
Structures were different. So that was the sixties. In 1990, there was another committee that explored formation of a supervisory union structure again. So Montpelier would maintain an elementary school district and would join what's now the union, what was the U32 high school district. And ultimately in that study, a change in governance was not recommended. In 2017, as you know, prior to Act 46, you did a study and completed a voluntary merger, creating a new union with Roxbury. And Washington Central was formed in 2019 by order of the state board. And that involved a study process and an alternative governance proposal, which included all of this kind of information. Plus, it might be useful for you to know that Washington Central, as a supervisory union, so when they had the Union High School District and those member elementary districts, and then the administrative services at the supervisory union, completed 4 additional studies looking for improved efficiencies, opportunities for kids in 2006, 2011, 2010, darn, I wanted to do those in order, and 2014. So they have a lot of history of internal study to think about, can we do things in ways that are better for students and communities? So that's the history. The next section is, so where are we now? What are the options for a merger between, or a new union, I should say, between MRPS and Washington Central? And basically, in the broadest sense, there are 2. besides, of course, a legislatively enacted one. Two voluntary processes. One is that you could form a new unified union through a process much like you went through when you joined with Montpelier, by going through a structured study process, developing articles of agreement, having review by the Secretary and State Board of Ed, and ultimately a vote of the electorate. So the same process, although there have been some clarifications to areas where the law and the instruction wasn't as clear as it was back in 2016, 17, 18, 19. The other option is a new option that was enacted with revisions in 2021 for taking effect in 2022. And it creates a new pathway, which is referred to in law as enlargement. And enlargement is a process where one district is enlarged through the joining of a second district. And I'll tell you a little bit more about the options for that process, but big picture, those are the two options right now. All of the information on pages 8 to 12 describes those steps. For forming a new unified union. And on page 11, I just want to talk about the enlarging process because that's new. Basically, the enlarging process would entail the board of one district deciding that it's advisable to join another district and making that request after preliminary study. Preliminary study is not defined. There's work to be done to clarify what that should entail, but I think we could clarify that with legal counsel and the agency's input. So do some study, decide you'd like to invite somebody to join your district and enlarge it. It goes to the Secretary and State Board, and assuming they recommend it, I think they might have to recommend it. It goes to your voters, the voters of the district that wishes to be enlarged. And if they vote yes, then it goes before the voters of the district that's being invited to join the enlarging district. The other possibility for that is one district could say, we'd like to join another district. We'd like to be enlarger, I guess. Do that informal study, go through the same process, ask your electorate to vote on joining the other district, and then the other district's electorate votes within 2 years on whether or not to accept your request to join. And at some point in the process, it's not clear in law, but at some point in process, you will have to almost certainly revise articles of agreement. The articles of the district that is joining the new district, the district to be enlarged, are repealed. But there are things that you will have to change, like word structure probably. And there are things you might want to change as well. So there would need to be some thought about how and when those articles were tackled. So those are the options. The RFP asked about timeline, and I will just briefly say, the answer to timeline is, it depends. Right? So it depends on the pathway you choose and any of the decisions that are made along the way. Certainly in every case, it's not a short process. And in the most expedited circumstances in the past, it was probably about a year in advance of the July 1 commencement of operations date. You asked about other districts joining a process with MRPS and Washington Central, and that starts on page 13. Broadly, other districts can participate in a formal study. So the one that Montpelier-Roxbury undertook, a study like that, to form a new union as either an advisory or a necessary district. In order for a new union to form, all necessary districts need to vote yes. If there are some necessary districts and advisory districts, the union can form whether or not the advisory district chooses to join or not. You could ask other districts to join your study as advisory or necessary, or they could ask you to join at the proper places in the process. The law does not explicitly address how it might work if the option of enlargement was chosen and you're looking at enlarging with multiple districts. But I would imagine through a voluntary process, you could manage multiple districts participating in an enlargement process. Specific organizations in the region, you asked about Barry. Barry has the same governing structure and operating structure as both Washington Central and MRPS, so could easily participate as a necessary or advisable district. You asked about the Career Center, and the information I found on the Career Center participation suggests that a little more legal advice and study, perhaps consultation with the agency, would be necessary to think about how they might participate. Their articles of agreement talk about dissolution of the Career Center, which would entail a study and a plan for what happens to them. But it's not entirely clear what would happen if they wanted to join a union of MRPS or Washington Central, given that there are other school districts like Harwood that are also part of that district. So it's a little complicated. Twinfield was another one that was asked about. And Twinfield is a K-12 operating district like your district. So operationally could easily merge. Not easily, but because it's never easy. But in terms of fit, that part can work nicely without having to change operating structures for kids. What's different for Twinfield is they're still a member of a supervisory union. So they collaborate with other districts like Washington Central used to do for those centralized services that are required to be provided at the supervisory union, like special education services, administrative services, transportation, data, financial management. So the state board would definitely be thinking about the implications of taking one of those districts out of that group and the remaining district's ability to provide high quality services for all kids in that region if Twinfield left. So that one's a little more complicated. And of course, there are many other options for collaboration that you may create on your own, the BOCES opportunity that I didn't dive into as part of this report. That's my
Getting too in the weeds, but in
Yeah.
that instance, if a district that's part of a supervisory union was leaving one SU and going to the other, would the SU that's being left behind, in this case Cal Central, have to also vote to like let them go? Sorry, maybe
Yeah.
that's not helpful to ask, but.
Good question.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I want to look to get the answer. I think I know the answer, but I don't want to give you the wrong one.
Because yeah, if their departure somehow was like a really major impact, then that SU might not want to let them go
and-
enlarge another district.
Yeah. If nothing changes and
Mhm.
Act 73 hadn't happened in a situation like that, regardless of the process, I think it's really likely that the state board would try to take its powers to redraw supervisory union boundaries
Mm.
and consider whether that was necessary, like whether that what's remaining of that SU gets merged with another SU, for example, which we saw little of post Act 46.
And I suppose it's technically what happened. Roxbury left one supervisory union and became part of a supervisory district.
Do you remember if the other districts had a vote to let it go?
I think they all,
Mm-mm.
that they did.
And do you remember if Northfield and Williamstown had the vote to let Roxbury go?
I don't think it did.
I don't think so
I
either.
don't think they did either.
But
No, I don't, I mean, I don't.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But I'm happy to look that up and make sure that Libby can give you that answer when you see me again. If you decide you want to see me again. The next section, pages 16 to 21, are comparisons of your articles of agreement. Not going to talk about those at all, other than to say there are a few things that are common, exactly the same, and there are lots of things that were handled in a similar way using different languages. And there are things that are different. And if, for example, you're looking at enlargement and amending one district's articles of agreement, that could be a useful tool. And it might be useful in advocacy, you know, what kinds of things do we need to think about
Right.
if we are, a new district is enacted by the legislature? How do we address those differences?
And do the articles of agreement address governance or operations or both?
Both.
Both.
The operations statements typically relate just to the first year of operations, understanding that the newly elected board then
Okay.
assumes responsibility for operations beyond that.
I see. Okay.
There's, I won't talk about it now. After the articles of agreement, there's a section that talks about all those current considerations, those pieces of data that you have to analyze if you're doing a formal governance study. And you might want to analyze if you're doing, exploring a unification, an enlargement process. Not going to walk through all of those, but want to take you to page 24, which has a nice graphic on your recent and projected pre-K-12 enrollment. The preceding 2 pages speak about your current operating structures. Oh,
The top line is Wash Central and the bottom
Oh,
line is
right.
MRPS. Sorry, sorry to interrupt you.
oh, no problem. Thank you for helping. So this page 4 is a summary graph of that, quick and easy visual way to look at it. And so you can see that the lower line, which is green in my copy, is MRPS, and that's a little more stable, a little more level than Washington Central, which is projected to continue to experience decline. I just quickly this morning calculated, and it might be in the narrative, that from 2019, 2020 to 2034, 2025 for MRPS, the calculation or the projection is a 10% decline. And if we look from just 24, 25, which was last year, because we don't know what 26 is yet, right? That's another 6%. So although it looks flatter, it still might be something that is significant to you. And Washington Central from 1920 to 34, 35 is looking at a 26% decline. And from this point forward, 15%. So there's still a larger proportion of decline before you than you've experienced in this chunk of years in the data to now. Page 25 gives you enrollment projections by grade level for the two supervisory districts. Not going to talk about them. 26 gives you current and projected enrollments by school, which might be interested. Page 27 begins a section on facilities and covers things like capacity, different ways to value your property, and some high-level information on capital needs as you've identified them at this point for both Montpelier and Wash Central. Not going to dive into that now, but I imagine that's something that could be interesting to read at some point. On page 31, there's a section that begins on financial considerations and includes data on FY 24 debts and assets. Your FY 25 audit is probably being completed now, and you'll see it later this winter. So that's the most recent information I had. So maybe you'll want to update this in a year or regularly as you think about your options. But that information is summarized on page 31 to 34. I want to bring your attention to page 37 as another possible highlight. The 2 pages preceding this have a table that includes historical tax rate information, both your equalized tax rate, your CLA, and your local homestead tax rate after CLA, and a little indicator of whether or not you were appraised that year, a town was reappraised that year. That information is graphically represented on the top of page 37. So you can see, and these are the local homestead tax rates, the ones after your CLA is applied, which is why it's different for each town, right? So you can see the trends there. I want to point out that you can't see the blackness, but there's a black diamond. So a diamond shape instead of a circle. If you're looking at the line that starts at the lowest level, which is Roxbury. So if you look at 2021, the lowest trend line is Roxbury, and you see in FY 23, there's a diamond there. That's a reappraisal year, right? So tax rates went down, but the taxpayer may not have experienced a reduction in their property taxes accordingly because their property values likely went up as part of the reappraisal. And you see in FY 24, for me, it's a teal line. The lowest line with a diamond is Montpelier. So you had a reappraisal in Montpelier. The big black line is there to highlight that between FY 24 and FY 25, the way we calculate tax rates changed. And we implemented those new duple weights, which I'm sure you spent a lot of time on. So I put the big black line there to point out that that's another place where a true apples to apples comparison can't be made, but you can draw some global conclusions about the way that your communities experience the tax rate changes and the new formula. And just remind you that that's the year when a lot of school budgets did not pass and is the part of the impetus for what is now Act 73 of 2025 and the conversations we're having about governance change on a statewide basis. The next section is the history of spending per pupil And there's a table for that on the top of page 38. I find this interesting. The table lists on the left the fiscal years we're looking at. And for both Montpelier-Roxbury and Washington Central, the education spending per equalized pupil. And I added the rank in terms of all of the school districts in the state of Vermont. So in 2021, Montpelier-Roxbury was the 68th in terms of per equalized pupil spending of 118 districts. And that placed you at the 57th, essentially the 58th percentile, meaning that you spent less than 58% of other districts in Vermont. So you can follow that information down and look at the similarities and differences, changes from year to year. Between 24 and 25, as I just said, the way we count pupils for the purposes of calculating tax rates changed and the vocabulary changed. And tax rates are now based on spending per long-term weighted ADM. Should I say ADM instead of pupil? Duly noted. I will improve my vocabulary. The data for FY26 wasn't out yet, even though your tax rates have been computed, but you should be able to look at that soon if you're interested. Really changed the way things look. The overall spending per pupil went down because now you have a long-term weighted pupil count that's larger than the actual number of bodies you have, right? Because it's not equalized anymore. And the weights changed to better reflect what data says about the cost of educating students based on different demographics. And that had an impact on where you fell in terms of rank and the percentage of students, of districts that spend. Might have reversed my percentiles there. That spend more than you, yes. So you spend less than, in 2025, MRPS spent less than 33.61% of other districts. So we're in the top third.
Whereas we weren't before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really low. Because they got Carson. As a week, for many of the people, yeah. So their people counts essentially went up, not actual. Yeah.
That could be an area of additional wondering, better understand how the pupil weights and what parts of them affected that. And maybe think about that in light of what the legislature is considering and how the commission is considering factors could be relevant and an area of other study.
I wish we had a tax guy on this board.
I'm going to skip information on transportation policies and contracts for now. It's required. It's probably something that you'd want to consider carefully in any kind of merger enacted by the legislature. Traditional process or enlargement process. And it's certainly something your communities will care a lot about. This is just a very basic starting place for that, almost a bookmark. I'm going to move on and talk about board structures tonight. So basically, this may be a little narrower than what it was pre-Act 46. The law is really clear as a result of that 2021 rewrite that there are 4 choices for board structures. proportional to town population, proportional with weighted voting to achieve proportionality. I think that's what you have now. So you kind of try to get proportional and then you improve the proportionality with weights. There's a modified at-large model where board seats are allocated by town, but the whole district gets to vote on everybody. And there's a pure at-large model where board members can come from any part of the community and every part of the community votes on all board members. So theoretically, you can have a board that's entirely comprised of Roxbury residents. Very unlikely to happen, but that's how a pure at-large model works.
And we just want to be in Washington Central.
Yeah, but they have two by town, so I suspect they have weighted voting too. But I should check. Yeah. And,
And is it,
and I'll tell you the reason I don't know for sure is they started with the modified at-large model, I think, in the order, the state board order, but then they amended it afterwards. So I
Right.
could look at the article, the warning, which is in here and tell you, but I'll get that for you another time.
okay, thank you.
So on page 41, I just modeled samples, not all the options, not necessarily the option you want. It includes your 2020 census data, so you could think about proportionality. And I provided a sample for each of those options. Proportional with seats by town, which I could figure a board no smaller than 21. There may be other options other people can figure out. Proportional with weighted voting, a modified at large, and a fully at large, where you could decide whatever size you want your board to be. Yes,
Modify that letter. It says like, for example, Berlin, it says 2 people. But how would you make sure? Oh, wait, I think I follow. Like when you do a ballot, would it say in Montpelier, would you be saying select up to 2 people from Berlin? Or
so
is it everything jumbled together?
I allocated seats to towns based on my best estimate of how we could come closest to proportionality. You could come up with a different plan that seems more reasonable to you, looking at the census figures. In this model, then they're elected by everybody in the entire district. So that's how you ensure all voices are heard in the election process. And it's proportional because everybody gets to vote on every single seat.
I think the way you just described it, Jake, and actually how would it work is correct then. There would be one school board ballot that every town votes on. But there would be people who are running for a seat who live in, who want the Berlin seats.
And so here in Montpelier, we'd say select the 2 people from Berlin.
Yeah,
For the board.
if they were both up at the same, if the seats were both up on the same,
Oh, right.
town meeting,
You'd
yeah.
settle, you'd have a massive election for those initial seats and settle into a rolling set of terms so that terms are 3 years and no more than a third of seats are up in any given year.
But in the at-large model, you could end up with a situation where everyone's from one town.
It sounds like
could.
it.
Or.
Yes.
I think it probably would be.
So samples. These samples don't include things like wards, which a study committee is exploring now. perhaps by the end of the session, there'll be an option for another way to structure boards that involves wards to support voluntary mergers if the legislature doesn't enact some. And the second to last section, page 43 to 55, is a comparison of learning opportunities. It's grouped by grade level structure, grade level groupings, K4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, 12, because you operate K4 and then have a 6, 8 middle school.
5, 8.
I mean,
5.
5, 8, yes, sorry, thank you. And they operate K6 and have a 7, 8 middle school and then a 9, 12 high school. So I just kind of chunked them in the best way to overlap comparisons. I would say that the lists are broad terms of learning opportunities and supports at each school. I generated them using the vocabulary of the school. So we might actually be talking about the same things in some cases, just labeling it differently. From handbooks and programs of studies, for example. I want to say that they may not include everything, and some of those everythings might be something that's important to you or a passion of a community member. This is a broad strokes first draft to think about, and I think if you decide to dive more deeply into a comparison of learning opportunities and what you might do differently, and how you might look for other ways to provide equity of high quality opportunities, you'll get more into detail. This doesn't talk about how much. Do I get PE twice a week, once a week, 20 minutes of art, or 60 minutes of art? It doesn't talk about quality of and outcomes, but it's a high level starting point to allow you to begin to think about possibilities and opportunities. And I wanted to give you a few minutes to look at it, but my time ends at 5:15. So
I just want to say, I appreciate that you included the co-curriculars. It's a part of the school experience.
right, for sure. So I guess I'd like to give you a choice. Would you like to spend 5 minutes skimming this? Or we could do a little, what strikes you as significant kind of conversation for a few minutes, which would actually help with next steps more than a scan. But what you need is what you need. How about thumbs up for skim? Thumbs up for initial reaction. All right. So that's why the elephant is here.
Reading.
You do. I'm going to lean a little bit into restorative circle practices, not formal restorative circles. You use them in the schools. And you may use them at other times. But when I do restorative circles, this is my talking piece. And he has tusks, so I think it's a he, is significant because he was a gift to me from a teacher after we intentionally invited the elephant into the room to discuss stereotypes, similarities, and differences about the different districts in the system. And they so appreciated the opportunity to welcome the elephant. The teacher gave that to me. And I feel like it's really appropriate for any time. We're going to share our thoughts about hard things. So I'm going to facilitate by posing just a few questions and prompts, and would like to offer a few ground rules that are based on the ground rules for restorative practice. Want to remind you that Libby and Mia will be listening for key takeaways that may be the basis for next steps. And remind you again that this is a starting place. You probably won't get to say everything you want to say and everything that came to you. You can expect more opportunities to engage. Today's about initial impressions. Nothing you say can be wrong. It's just your initial impressions. In terms of ground rule, if I was passing this, and I'm not going to, only the person speaking, only the person with the talking piece gets to speak. For us, that means don't interrupt the person who's speaking. If when your turn comes and you don't want to say anything, it's okay to pass. I ask that when people speak, you speak with respect. That means addressing the center of the circle, or even me, if this was a circle, the center of the room. We're not in a circle. Not necessarily responding to anyone else individually. I ask you to use your time respectfully to allow others to contribute. Say just what you need to say. Be thoughtful about your choice of words and be mindful of tone and body language. I also ask you to listen with respect, giving yourself permission to truly listen to what other people are saying and trusting that you'll know what you need to say when it gets to your turn. Remember, there's no wrong answers. They're your opinions, they're your perspective today. So just remind yourself that it's okay to listen. And of course, be mindful of body language when listening. Can you agree to those ground rules? Yes. Okay. So I'm going to give you a first prompt. What is one thing that stands out to you in the report and why? And anybody can start, but we'll go that way. So I make sure that everybody has a chance to speak.
And make sure we've got Tim who's online.
Okay. So remind me, but Tim will have you go after Jim and before Lynn. Anybody want to start? Something that stands out to you in the report.
I can start.
Yeah, Jake said first.
That's okay.
Okay,
Oh, I was just gonna
Jill.
say that the change from the prior year to the 2025 with the new weights, like the change for both districts, was pretty striking to me.
Libby, do you want to participate?
No.
Okay.
I think the main thing that stands out to me is the complexity of this process, because it often in casual conversation, as well as sometimes policy conversation, main sort of boilerplate topics are what it's sort of boiled down to. Like we need to be larger districts because it will save us money. We'll have efficiencies of scale, or we have to have larger districts because it means there's more opportunities for students, or we can't have larger districts because we have been sports rivals for 20 years. So, and those are data points in a much more complex environment that we're working in. And it's not to say that consolidation is bad. I feel open to consolidation in general, and we have to hold that complexity and allow space for that complexity. If we were to do this voluntarily, or if it's going to be done as a required process.
I was thinking in mind the complexity, but also with how that's all brought down to actual like tangible items in the report, and how it's very helpful to see it laid out in this way. And be able to start to meat to the bones of what we're thinking about and what we're talking about. And when we're talking about the complexity and you see these lists at the end of educational opportunities, like now that we have the list, how do we start thinking about them?
I think the report is really helpful, and thank you for putting it together. What stood out to me is the projected enrollment trends, and you know, the kind of knowing how either in foundation formula or current system, it's difficult when your enrollment is dropping rapidly. So that is really helpful to see and quantify, and also like a kind of, it's interesting to look at how everything stabilizes in the future. Whereas in the past few years, it's been a little bit jumpy and also like a pretty swift rate of decline in Washington Central. And I just kind of wonder like if there's something feeding the trends beyond just population, birth rates, you know, that might, I don't know, might make things a little bit even more precipitous than what's projected.
It is complicated. What sort of stands, what I'm sort of thinking about is the sample board structures. I know that, that different towns may have different values, and that's been a consideration in the past when it comes to representation. And I'm curious how an agreement for any kind of merger, whether board structures would come from, whether the way that boards are structured will be part of the new law, or whether it will be up to different districts to decide how they want to structure their boards. That's a curious question. Because I know that different towns have different values in some ways.
Yeah, no, thank you for this. It's, I mean, Jay, super helpful, super thorough. I think really kind of lays out, you know, where we're at and what the issues are. Well, so I was not surprised by anything. This is kind of how I saw it, and I've been seeing the complexity for a while. I think kind of like, you know, if we're going forward, I think it's really hammers home, not just complexity, but the fact that if this is something we're going to pursue, it's going to take both a lot of process, but also a lot of leadership, a lot of people explaining why it makes sense, explaining the pros and cons, doing a lot of listening, but also doing a lot of persuading as well. Because, you know, there is something that will set 9 out of 10 members in Sierra Fire support, either for legitimate reasons or because they're misinterpreting the data and not taking it correctly. So, yeah, so it's kind of exactly as I thought it was going to be. I think there's, you know, a lot of opportunity, but it's also going to be, you know, really complicated dealing with both the practical implications of making it happen and then all, you know, the emotion that goes involved. Just, you know, the perfect examples, like I don't think we can do an enlargement because one district is not going to want to go out of perception, even if everything else makes sense. Yeah, so it's going to be a process.
Tim.
I was thinking much along the same lines as Jim, actually, from the beginning of your conversation, Tracy, and thank you. Again, this was an excellent report and really helpful. But the process is kind of what stuck out to me. I'd be lying if I said I really feel like I understand those options well right now. And I think they would be that it's a heavy lift by design. So this is a great document that gives us a baseline though to have some of those initial conversations. So thank you.
Well, I think 2 things stood out for me. My kids went to U32, so I have a great fondness for U32, as you all know. I I was interested in the curriculum pieces that matched and maybe didn't match. Because of I don't know what they're doing there now, but there used to be a lot of opportunities that were different in Montpelier. And I think and I was on the school board there, and so I think the complications of how we're gonna figure out how we're putting a board together. I mean, we've grappled with this with Roxbury, and that was a small town, and now we have another huge district joining us. And their voting structure, I think, is different from ours in terms of how decisions get made with the separate town. So it could be complicated.
I am over my time, but may I have permission to pose one more prompt that would be helpful if we can? So I have 7, so we could keep doing it another time. But one that I highlighted is, and some of you touched on it a little bit, but what's one next step that emerges for you as a potential important step to consider after this basic introduction?
That in terms of you know, what they're feeling and you know, whether it makes sense to, you know, gotta take steps beyond that. But you know, this is obviously a dance and we need a partner, and if the partner is at a different place or you know, or willing to go forward, that's the first thing I think we need to know.
Tim is next.
I saw you put in the areas for further consideration, a number of things and impacts on staff and what it would mean for staff on both sides. I'd be very curious to understand.
I would echo what Jim said, and I also sort of want to be on the fly on the wall for their conversation. See their reaction.
Zoom in on the curve.
I was gonna say, that's possible. I am also curious what our neighbors in Washington Central are thinking. And I'm curious to hear what Montpelier and Roxbury community members are thinking. If in like with some of this information in front of them. We hear anecdotally from members of the community off and on around the idea of merger with U32 and or Wash Central. And I think a lot of that has been, as you were saying earlier, the pros and cons of this are informed by our own values, our community values, our personal biases. And I think one of the values of what you've done for us here is that it helps provide that objective information. And so I'd be really curious to hear what members of the Montpelier and Roxbury communities, how they view this, all of this data. I'm not exactly sure what that looks like right now, but that's a curiosity I have.
I was thinking along the lines of how to communicate this with communities, but also in the context of what's happening at the state level. And so we've got to have our dancing partner, but we're in an unknown room too. So like trying to, when we're communicating and people are just reading this or we're sharing this in some format, making sure that's front and present is part of the conversation.
I think if it wasn't for Act 73, and I might have more of a vision on possible next steps, but considering that they are trying to form the text of at least 4,000 kids, and us plus Washington Central will only be a couple thousand. feeling more of a back burner thing out. Hopefully we can find out what they're doing and not doing pretty quickly, but yeah, for now, it does feel like on the back burner, and I don't wanna alarm about our, before we
I would like to spend a lot more time with this personally because I want to understand, or I want to try to foresee what some of the biggest changes might be for families. Both for families with kids and just as taxpayers. You know, if there are forced mergers, I think if I can spend time with this, maybe I can, that's my hope, is that I can find some things that I can just share with people. Anecdotally, these are possible major changes that could come as a result of, this is what some of those changes might look like for you, for us. Don't know.
When do you want to sign in? Or-
Yeah, I'd be interested in knowing, what the U32 community thinks about this, whether that's a conversation with board members, we invite them to come and talk with us too, or I'd kind of like to get a feed on what the feeling is there.
So Mia and Libby, how about just one item that's a key takeaway for you as you move forward with collaborating with your immediate colleagues on next steps? Everything will go with you, but once one big one.
More learning and curiosity.
I heard, and it's nice to have in a public document, the complexity of the process. Because as Mia said earlier, it's a major misunderstanding as to how complex this process is. And so just understanding exactly how complex, and with 73, it makes it even more complex. And in it, I heard people really wanting to hear from our community members more about any type of merger or redistricting, regardless of whether we're talking about this potential or a forced one through the legislation, mandated one through the
Enacted?
legislation.
I'm trying enacted.
Enacted, okay.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you. Remember that Washington Central, I'll do a brief pop in to say hi to them tonight, but they will be doing this same thing on September 3rd. Public availability beginning now. And chairs and superintendents already have a plan in place, and vice chairs, to begin working on next steps. So you can definitely expect more opportunities to engage. And I will look back in my notes and try and, hopefully I got all of your questions. And I'll work with Libby so that she can say, hey, here's the answer to that question at a next meeting. Thank you very much. Well, thank you.
Thanks so much, Tracy.
Yeah.
And so we have dinner in the back. The menu is steak, mac and cheese, salad, rolls. I know.
What I can smell right now is broccoli, so.
There is
When you said
There
steak,
is broccoli. So we moved beyond positive pie, grown up a little bit.
Sorry,
now
Tim.
caterer. Tracy, you're welcome to have, we have plenty of food back there. So should we
Yeah.
take a
and
break and go eat?
We are running just a tiny bit behind, but I'm gonna suggest that we still give ourselves 30 minutes to eat. I mean, if
Yeah.
people are ready to start, we can start, but
Yeah.
yeah, for now, Tim, we're thinking convene back at 6, but we can, don't go far.
I'll just leave this live.
Yeah, great.
Great, thanks.
Let's see if we have Tim. We probably do.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Good dinner, Tim.
sorry. You couldn't enjoy the meal with us.
I got some cooked by my mom, so I'm all good.
Okay. Mama
Might even
cooking.
be better. Okay. I think we're turning this over to you, Libby, to facilitate the discussion of our priorities and indicators to see if there's any revisions we want to make.
Yes. Yes, so I think the priorities of the board was linked into the agenda. However, we might want to look at the board indicators instead, and I emailed that all, I shared that with
Ah,
all the
yes.
board today.
And it is now in the agenda, so maybe the agenda.
Oh,
was
I,
updated.
yeah,
Oh,
I
you
updated
added.
it, but
Okay,
I wasn't
great.
sure if you all got the updates or not.
Mhm.
So if you pull up those board indicators, and you may not have looked at them in a while, there was some conversation when when Mike and team were talking about the continuous improvement plans and making sure they match. I'm gonna say they match pretty well right now, so I don't know if we really need to spend our time talking about making them match better, because I think they do for the most part. Particularly because the board had this till 2026, right, which is this school year. So I'm not sure if that's the best use of our time. However, it's the board's document, so you certainly could entertain that. So when we were talking about the conversation today of what two questions really are most impactful for certainly our work at the school district. The first being, what evidence would the board like to receive across the school year? And it could be what we already do. I mean, that's absolutely fine. Or it could be something different. I know I've had conversations with Tim in the past of like, hey, maybe we could do, we could put these more into story or action, put the data into more real terms for us so we understand it outside of the education circles, like that kind of thing. So what kind of evidence would the board like to see to show growth in these areas? And then the other question I have is, what are the learning opportunities or presentations that the board would like to have to better understand our systems of learning and support? So if and when community members talk to the board about what's happening in our schools to support certain learners or to excite certain learners, you got an answer, or at least you got a presentation to pull from. So those are the two big questions that I was thinking about in terms of the discussion around board indicators. Does that sound okay with the board? So what I'm gonna give you first, I saw a couple nods there, is just some think time. So think time to peruse the board indicator doc that was emailed earlier and is linked in the agenda. I updated the data reports in here. So you've seen those before. There's nothing new in those data reports because you've seen those in data presentations. And the first question we'll be going with is, what evidence would the board like to receive across the school year to show growth in these indicators? And again, it could be things we're already doing, or it could be a riff on those, or it could be something completely new. So I'm going to give the board about take about 3 minutes of think time right now, so that because you might not have had a chance. So take about 3 minutes of think time, and then we're going to do a turn and talk with somebody near you so you can bounce off some ideas with people, and then we'll do a whole share out.
And and just to reiterate, what we're specifically spending our 3 minutes on is this question of what evidence would we like to see? Okay.
What evidence would the board like to receive across the school year as we're thinking about how to plan these meetings?
Bless you.
Okay, so you had a couple of minutes to think about that. I'm gonna have you just turn and talk to the person sitting next to you. So maybe you three gentlemen down there, Jim, Jake and Rhett, Casey and Mia, and Jill and Lynn. Just have a conversation of what evidence are you thinking about in terms of what the board would like to see to show growth or lack of growth, quite honestly, in the indicators. Oh, and Tim, how are we including you here? Tim, you're gonna do some thinking on your own.
We get to keep thinking.
Yeah, you get to keep thinking and writing. Sorry, Tim.
What kind of difference from indicators and evidence? I kept feeling like what I would.
Can I take a crack at that?
Yep.
My interpretation of it is the evidence is what shows we're hitting the indicators.
Okay, okay. Like the tangible.
Yeah, I want to get too hung up on it. I just have a conversation, see what you think.
Okay. Okay. What evidence?
Sure. Yeah. Thing. Like in person. In thinking about.
Yeah.
I understand them, so maybe not.
What'd you say? Sorry.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Coming at it from that perspective.
Right.
I don't know, but I know.
Mhm.
And I think it.
Yeah, there's a lot of safety in the development. So that we have. In school relationship.
Some measures.
Mhm.
What do you think?
Yeah.
I would like to see when we get data presentations of like
Yes.
here's where we want to be, especially because we're talking about this school year is the final year of this indicator. So where did we say we wanted to be by spring of 2026 and where are we now? In addition to what we currently get is a lot of like, here's where we, how far we've come, which is, or maybe flip it to, whatever the data shows us. And we don't totally see, like, have that comparison of like, well, this is what we've been striving for, how close are we? Or how far away are we? This might not be a real indicator. We don't have it in ours. Probably because I just didn't think of it, but I have seen it in the state conversation a little bit, which is the graduation rate. What is it? I actually couldn't tell you what somebody. The school board chair, graduation rate. I think that would be, that's a good thing for us to know. But maybe it's more of a nice to have that. Like I said, not being an educator myself, I have no idea of how, like, what, is that really an indicator, right? What's that mean? I am curious to know about data at these milestones that, research has told us are sort of like, this is a point at which in a student's life, they're either gonna have kind of a smooth path or it's still gonna be a lot of people. And the one that stands out to me is literacy in eighth grade. School gets or stays a lot harder if you're not at a certain literacy benchmark in third grade.
I think there's a couple of other ones, and I think that would be helpful for us to see, to know whether or not our system is succeeding, maybe, it's not quite the right word, but doing what it needs to do to set kids up for future
Where it
success.
says establish it.
And then this is one indicator we've had that we don't ask about yet, or we don't get data on, and which is hearing from our upper class students about how confident they feel about being successful after they, what their future looks like.
It's,
And I don't know, maybe that's a question we can add to payroll. Because that's another, like, a data point of like test scores and stuff is one area, and then there's also the data point from the actual people who are moving through the system. And not that we have to like turn that one into, put that kind of a data point on a pedestal or anything, but just that it helps us know. So those are the things.
Those responses considered favorable, so that's a baseline. Feel satisfied. Is that what we want to increase?
Yep.
Are we just targeting?
Is that
Yes, I can kind of answer that question, because I think when we first wrote those numbers were different. And then as we started to see some data from our administrators, we saw, oh, we actually have not that big of a gap that we have to make up right now in literacy, but we have a bigger gap we need to make up in math, which is why it's a 10% growth instead of a 5% growth. So I know that those were informed by a little bit, some kind of baseline understanding, which was maybe two falls ago.
Better
the measure.
How many more
Yeah.
do we have?
Yep.
For how long?
Yep.
Until we're.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a lot harder to do.
Right. And the reality is, I mean, the 5% and the 10% don't get us to 100% proficiency in, once again, like third graders. Because the reality is, that's not actually something that's attainable, given the somewhat fluidity of the population. And this is complex and challenging, so we know that there will be some kids who still need support beyond. But yeah, I don't know exactly what the 5% was gonna get us to. Was it gonna get us to 85? Was it gonna get us to- But I know it wasn't gonna get us to 100. And that's not really what we're. It's not realistic.
Well.
Yeah.
One thing that the
Fair ballot.
Yeah.
Right.
equity and engagement committee was talking about on Monday.
I guess big picture, the main thing I think about, like our responsibility and the things like is our system working
Here. We had a
for our
couple people
students?
come.
I understand,
they
but
felt
having
people
the impact of.
turned into a
students
conversation
that
about
needs
like, how do we get our
And
kids to
that's-
talk to us?
I think that's
It
the
was still
data we
nice,
need.
an idea of continuing that on sort of a regular basis, and then we were looking at Anna put together the whole engagement strategy. But we were
What's it-
thinking
what-
about like just tabling it,
That what we're measuring.
you know, and just maybe
Yes.
just public presence
I can't.
is a way to.
Right,
Like
right.
we have some
Yeah.
members of the board are present at.
And I think the one you
And we
listed
thought,
is
like,
how are we doing compared to
a
maybe it's
table
state averages, or
holistic
maybe it's our
balance
neighboring
for, like,
districts, or maybe, whatever it is, however
20
we pick
minutes
it,
Before it starts,
I think is another
you know, like right in the.
angle at
Just
which
20
to
minutes,
answer the question,
because, like,
does our system
Everybody goes in
do
and loves it,
at
so you don't wanna be
educating students?
stirring, and I wanna watch the lips of that.
I was thinking about that. in terms of
But like 20 minutes, and we're done. We're just-
There's opportunities to
Add
see what other programs, what other.
We always do the table at the fall festival.
Well, and what their outcomes are.
Success, like how much.
Like
change
maybe
they're gonna
that's
Yeah.
a way to bend
Yeah.
it, but whether people are happy with how they'll.
Okay, finish up that conversation.
That would be. Sampling, the fall festival or the battle,
people, but.
Yeah, we didn't really
Right.
have academic.
Yeah.
It's okay.
It's all right.
All
right.
Hey,
Yeah.
Something, yeah.
let's have a little share out. Lynn and Jill, you want to go first? What kind of things were you two talking about?
Well, we were talking about, community engagement and how to get that the board, I feel the board has done a much better job on that, and we were talking about ways that we could come up with, more opportunities for people to be involved.
When you say be involved, can you be more, like, what do you mean? Be involved in what?
Parents coming to more events, people in the community knowing what's going on at the school. Maybe volunteering, just having more, I lived in Montpelier a long time, but my kids didn't go to the Montpelier school system, and honestly, I had no idea what went on here. And then I'm voting for the school budget, and I think it's important that people know, like, we're getting some bang for our bucks here. They're doing a great job there. Whether that's articles in the paper or, having activities that involve the community and the students, or, I don't know, putting on impromptu things on the street to advertise a play, or, I mean, you could probably come up with a million ideas.
Jill, you want to add anything?
No. Then we talked a lot about the sense of belonging, safety and wellness, which is a lot harder to come up with like concrete indicators, right? Like academic achievement, you have numbers and you can measure. But how can we ensure that students can genuinely participate in like co-curriculars, clubs, sports and things like that, like making sure we're removing any barriers. Whether it's like having equipment that's available to students and having a way to sort of get it to them without it feeling like you're under a microscope, or how can we, if there's enough sort of clubs and activities and things that kids can sort of find their niche. So maybe more kids, I don't know what the baseline is, but like making sure you get lots of it, like a good percentage of the student community participating in some kind of activity, club volunteerism, something.
You're saying have data on that?
Yeah, I mean, it just to start, yeah, I think so.
Anything else you want to add?
No.
Tim, I don't want to forget you, so I'm going to call you out now.
Great, thanks. Lively conversation over here. And had a few things. One was the one that you mentioned, Libby. Some of the reports, I still struggle to understand like what I should take away from VT Cap versus RenStar. What do you guys think of these tests and what they're telling us? So I think if some of the data presentations could have a little more of that contextualization and kind of focusing more on what you guys understand the data to say versus the data, I think would be really helpful for me. I think they're really valuable, and I definitely appreciate them, but I think I could gain a lot from hearing what you guys take away from them a little bit more. In that category, the other things I thought, and I don't know how feasible they are, but if possible, on closing the achievement gap, some view of how parents feel their kids are doing in their continuous growth, is like what that view looks like, to see if it matches with what the data is saying. And this one might be really difficult, but I always wondered if feedback from graduates of Union, Main Street, and it might be tough to get the high schoolers after they go, but looking back a year or two, did that previous school and what you learned there prepare you for where you are now? Some of that feedback might be interesting. I don't know, I defer to you guys, but it's just something I was thinking about. And then the one other thing, I don't know if it fits in belonging or community engagement, but I know that there's a lot of cool stuff going on with the caregiver councils, and I was wondering if there might be an opportunity for them to come to a board meeting and for us all to hear what everyone's talking about and doing. Like a more direct report out from the caregiver councils once or twice a year, or a summary or something like that. Those were just some ideas.
Okay, thanks, Tim.
Yep.
And jump in and interrupt if if you wanna add, don't be rude. Okay,
Don't be afraid.
don't be afraid to be rude, sorry. Don't-
Well, I'll try not to be rude either.
Also,
Alright.
don't be rude.
All right, Mia and Casey,
Where'd you go?
Sure. We mostly focused on a data conversation, but I think what we might be looking for is more of a contextualization of the data when we get it. So like what the goal is, what the measure of success is, and if we're increasing by 5%, like how close are we actually getting, and does that measure of success change with time? Should we be rethinking what these percentage increases look like? Anything else, Mia?
Oh, similar to that one, there are, one of the things that I've learned as a board member is that there are certain milestones in a student's academic sort of career that are strong indicators for success past school. And the only one that I can think of tonight is literacy in third grade. So it seems to me like, but I know there are a couple of others, like maybe there's like math in ninth grade or something
I
like
think it's
that.
a huge milestone for graduation rate, yeah.
Just in general, ninth grade, maybe,
Mhm.
maybe not in a particular subject, but if we could see, and that probably wouldn't necessarily need to be, I know we get data presentations every year or 3 times a year. I don't know that we would need to see that in every data presentation, but maybe once a year. It feels like a good indicator of how well our system is doing to know where the students are at those big milestones. Because one thing that I think is important for us as board members to keep in mind is that when it comes to these indicators, our role is our system working? And if it's not, then what do we need to do to support making it better? And if it is, let's celebrate that. So I think those kinds of things would help us keep that big picture in mind.
And I think maybe the other thing that Tim touched on a little bit already that we talked about was the baseline for 11th and 12th graders, and like it's in the academic achievement, but it kind of applies to all. Like,
Yeah.
Are we the folks that are leaving our system? Are they getting what they need? And how do
Yeah.
we get that data from
From their
them?
own perspective,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, because our test score data tells us from one angle, and then seeing it from their perspective gives us another angle that putting the two together could be really helpful.
Gentleman at the end of the table,
Man corner.
the man corner, yeah.
I would agree, I think, well, we talked about some other things, but I would agree on the contextualization. Like if, before we get a presentation about data, it'd be great if we could set the scene like, oh, the board has this goal to blah, 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 blah. And here is some data.
Great goals.
To that, yeah. That could be really helpful. And also I wonder on the community and engagement survey, if it's intentionally designed to match our goals, or if it's just kind of like, yeah, some questions may relate to our goals. If it's not intentionally designed, could we more intentionally design it? I couldn't make my screen bigger, but it looked like there was like suggestion that there were some data points that related, but maybe it could be synced up even more.
I also, and one of them, I would love to see more data on like both 11 and 12, but also like even to the extent we get beyond that, it'd be great to know where graduates are going, what they're doing, how that breaks down demographically. How they compare, like who's taking things like the SATs and the ACTs. How are they doing compared to other schools? Who's taking AP tests? How are they comparing to other schools? That would be great to know. It'd just be great to know how at that kind of like, at the launching point past this, how are they doing and where are they going to it? But that's the whole point.
Anything you wanna add down there?
Well, there's a little image of this belonging question in here. And I just, I know that's really important, but is all of our understanding of social emotional wellness hinging on that one question?
Which
And-
question are you talking about?
You do not feel a sense of belonging with your child's school community, not a problem at all, small problem. 71% of the,
Engagement survey.
yeah, yeah.
Not the kid, not the kid survey.
Yeah, I guess, but whether it's, but that, even if it's the kid survey, how else can we sort of see how we're doing in terms of social emotional wellness and family, the question of belonging is important, and it's one question when there's such a broad, it feels like if we get a good response to that question, then we're doing great, but it feels like a lot is hinging on that one question, whether you're talking about kids or you're talking about families, and like, how can we flesh that out, and what might that look like? That's a question that I have. When it comes to the engagement thing, I'm hearing Lynn saying that we don't know what people know, but I don't know that we can know what people know in terms of what's going on with the system. But I do think that what we can measure is our intentional efforts to be in places, because one of the things the equity and engagement group was talking about was like tabling and being out there and being available, so that I don't know what you don't know, but at least I'm in front of you. One of us or some of us are in front of you in a variety of different circumstances and contexts, available to potentially either receive your questions, get an email so we can potentially get an answer to you, maybe provide an answer in the moment, but at the very least, like, we can measure how much we're making ourselves available and in what circumstances are we making ourselves available. And that might be a goal that we could build on over the course of a couple of years. In a
We
sense.
should figure out what works.
Yeah, I mean,
Not everything we get that.
I know that I've put a lot of effort into being available in Roxbury, and a lot of people don't show up. But still, I think not giving up on it is important, not failing to go out there, making sure that I continue to try to just say, please reach out, or, if you'd like to talk to me, let's make a time to do that. I personally don't want to get into a lot of stuff at pickup, but I'm happy to make a time to have a conversation with you about anything you want. And I don't know how we can do that as a group, just sort of make ourselves present in the community and make people aware that we're there, so that we can answer questions if they have them.
Okay, thank you. All right, you're gonna think time again for question number 2.
But I am going to.
Yes, please do.
I think it would be worthwhile to think about the makeup of the board too, and to make it considerably effort to have the people in it. I mean, I love everyone on the board, I think you do a great job. But I'm the only one person and they're all white. Could be, that doesn't totally represent a community. Over 30% of the people in North Philly are over 50.
Okay. Second question for some think times. What are the learning opportunities and or presentations that the board would like to see to better understand our systems of learning and support. With particularly attention, because you have a policy that mandates it, any kind of presentation or learning opportunity around diversity, equity, and inclusion. So that we can start planning that now. And hire anybody if we need to hire them. So again, the question are, what learning opportunities or presentations would the board like to have to better understand our systems of learning and support? So some examples would be DEI efforts. Another, I throw out the term MTSS all the time. It's in all our literature. Some of Jim probably could state it better than some of our teachers, but but some people may not because they're newer to the board. Instructional framework might be something that you're hearing more and more about. So things that you're interested in knowing more about in terms of our system. So again, 3 minutes of think time, and then we'll do some turn talking. Okay, why don't you have a second to turn and talk to your partners about any kind of presentations or learning opportunities you'd like to have. Think of all the jargon that comes out of my mouth.
Now I have a whole.
You have a lot.
I have a lot.
Why did you think?
Exactly.
That I.
What do you know? More than
What
20
do you know?
seconds.
I know.
More than 20 seconds. What I need, yeah. Okay, so in addition to the ones that Libby mentioned, which I heard Libby mention,
And I
yeah,
really like
efforts.
anything that
You
comes
know,
from
one thing we
alternative
mentioned
pathways.
at this particular
framework.
committee meeting, but I remember
So
Libby saying,
interested
you know
in-
what?
because I know that.
It'd be kind of cool to say like, here are our efforts,
SATs
and here's what
tests are
we
like
know from our
a big
colleagues.
part.
We
Kind of what we're going here.
go to
also really
conferences or
like
whatever, we talk to one another, so anyway, that would be interesting to have
Because at
a
least
piece of
in
that.
Roxbury, they've-
I know
I
that
don't
there are
think that's
new
gonna always
education
be the
quality
case, but I know
standards.
that
We
there's-
have no idea
There's maybe a more
what that means,
substantial
or
proportion.
how that translates into
kids in
classrooms,
Roxbury
so I
take
think that would be
advantage of
really
these sort of
interesting.
alternative routes
And I
that are
believe there are certain things that the board is responsible for,
4 years.
or those might just be the
Those are
district,
some-
new district quality standards, I don't know. Anyway, but
Sounds like we need to learn more.
we might need to learn more.
I would- I think-
Are the literacy professional development that our elementary teachers did was a full 2-year process, and we got like a snapshot of it halfway through. I think it'd be really great to hear, okay, we're done with it. Some highlights of what we learned, and here are some things that are changing. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And then I think similarly for math, where we actually have more growth we need to do is, what our data says. So what are we doing about improving math instruction? Or what does, I don't know, maybe it's what does math instruction look like? And then I think some of those ones that we had last year, like we had the eco presentation, we had bridges, we had the innovation lab. In years past, our sustainability classes come and presented. I don't think they came last year, but they've come maybe the theater group from the high school could come, or maybe an athletic team, or like a set of different athletes could come and talk about what it means to them to be a student athlete, or the debate team, maybe we could have like some of those like short highlights.
We got from.
It's fun.
Yeah. And I think.
They're switching. Instead of the understanding things.
And those things are a part of schools.
What is it?
Certainly, I mean, some of them are classes, like innovation lab and sustainability, but they're a part of school, and just like Jill was pointing out,
That kind of.
we don't have any information on how many kids participate in them, and they are a major factor in belonging in school, and we have a belonging environment, so.
Transfer and all.
Anyway. What's been?
And I don't tend to know all the jargon, you don't know. So
Yeah.
there's lots of things.
And you will interrupt me and call me out when I say it.
I Googled
You Googled it.
No, ask me.
I will do that.
All right, Tim, we're gonna start with you this time.
Excellent. Three things. The one you already mentioned, I think I have a general sense of what multi-tiered system of supports is, but I remember coming in and everyone talking about it and just, way over my head, no idea what it was. And so some general training on that, I think would be great.
Got it, yep.
Be curious about sort of understanding how federal dollars translate into student support in a really practical sense right now in the different schools, and like how big that is and how impactful it is, just so we can kind of understand current risks and such. And then another idea is just sort of like a curriculum 101, like how you folks approach curriculum design and kind of understanding that. I was thinking when I was looking at the difference between our offerings and Wash Central, and clearly, it's a lot the same, but there's different choices here and there. And so just kind of understanding, not getting like into, we're not selecting textbooks, but just like high level, what, how you approach setting the curriculum, selecting classes, all that kind of stuff. Some ideas. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. We'll stick with the gentleman of the group and go down to the other end of the table there.
I mean, I had a few. I think an overview of the educational changes at the state and kind of what that scroll is all about and what it means, maybe for a little later in the year, but.
Yeah, we're gonna be talking about that, I have a feeling.
Yeah, we've talked about that a lot, but it might be good to just before sessions tee up with a one-on-one of where it's at, where things are, and what the possible outcomes are. Because I think there's a lot of confusion if we can start at a good place. That might be not the worst thing. We want to talk about, just in the educational world in general, about how our boys are doing, and some indications they're not doing terribly well. It'd be great to see how they're doing in this district, what we're thinking about that, because I know that some of our students who struggle the most are boys, and boys from families where they're not getting a ton of support. So I think that would be something that would be great to explore. And AI, what are we doing about it?
Good one.
Can I just put a little plug in on that second one Jim mentioned? There's a documentary out called Gone Guys. It was shown at the Savoy previously, and it will be back on October 3rd, if anybody's interested in watching it, and it addresses its challenges. And I believe our class here at MHS around healthy masculinity is highlighted in,
Oh, really?
I mean, not like a feature or whatever, but is mentioned, or maybe they profile, they talk to Joe Carroll.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or maybe I just forgot.
And, yeah, so
Cool.
it's part of the social conversation right now.
I think it's in Barry at the number 6 and wait for her.
Oh, good. Oh,
Friday.
of course, yeah.
We'll go tomorrow. Cool. Anything else from Rhett and Jake?
I didn't have a lot of new things, but I definitely am interested in the alternative pathways view of how things are going for kids that are choosing those different ways of sort of learning, and curious about how kids at, I don't know if we've really done this, but how kids at CVCC that come from our district are doing potentially, maybe combining those two, but I know there's a lot of emphasis on ACTs and SATs and four-year schools, and there are a lot of folks that are finding different ways of doing things, and just hearing about how that looks is a bit curious to me.
Jake, you want anything?
I appreciated the presentation we got from the two literacy coaches on how they're changing how they teach literacy. They're switching entirely over to phonetics, is that what it's called?
We're not switching entirely, but yeah, I know. Yep.
But I'm interested in like pedagogy and like what teams of teachers are doing to move the needle
In literacy specifically or math?
in anything.
Okay.
I think we're gonna be busy this year.
This is very helpful.
It's a great list. We also talked about that literacy one and a math one. Yeah, what does it look like? What are the things that we're doing to make it stronger, when we teach literacy, teach math? I don't know if this is what you were talking about, Jim. I think you might have been talking more about the governance shifts that are being talked about at the state level, but we also have new education quality standards. And that must have some kind of impact in what we teach and how we teach. I have no idea. So I think an improve or like a presentation on what are any highlights, and maybe also if there's anything that the board is responsible for within those new standards. We both really enjoy those kind of like highlight presentations, like of eco, innovation lab, sustainability. So other ideas we had for that were maybe we invite some of our older students, like from the older middle school grades up to through high school, who are participating in some of the other kind of co-curricular things that are happening, like a group of athletes or a group from the mask theater or a group from the debate team. Like, what's that experience like? Because those are also things that are important to the school experience.
The only other one that I have on there, yeah, but sharing back with the doctors.
Yeah. Oh, and one other one I thought of is, the Central Vermont Career Center is planning on a bond vote in November, and I think it would be valuable for our community. I know they held a community forum just at the end of school last year, of the school year last year, and there weren't a ton of people there. I know they had it recorded so people could watch it, but it does seem like as we get closer to the point where we'd be asking our community to vote on it, it would be good to have them here for a presentation and some Q&A about it. We would invite Jody back sometime in the fall.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Forgive me.
I didn't start with you all. I don't like how the tables are set up.
I don't want to either. I can't
No,
see
I-
anybody.
Thank you, Lynn. Lynn and Jill?
I can start, and some of it has been alluded to already, but as far as like specific acronym stuff, CBL and PLP and what they are and what the difference is, and I could end up in them, so. Community-based learning.
Oh, yeah.
CBL, but then there's a personalized learning plan, but I also feel like you're not only say PLS, so now I'm not sure what the S is for in that. So, I mean, it's obviously like sort of what, you know, an alternative pathway or like a community-based opportunity. Sometimes it turns into grades, maybe sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it's student-driven. I don't know, and I don't know the difference, and I think that would be helpful, especially for like middle school families, those their kids are starting to come up here and starting to hear about someone's doing a CBL. Great, driver's license.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. And then sort of similar to what Tim was saying about the curriculum, I just thought it'd be kind of neat to have like, and again, I don't know that we're gonna have a lot of time, but like a pre-K to 12, like take us through like one subject, like sort of like how does it build on itself? And maybe it doesn't have to be year by year, but like in elementary school, these are the things we're working on, and then we add to it and build on it in the middle school at this part, and then by the time we get here, it turns into this. Like it's kind of neat to just kind of see the district-wide progression of like a particular topic, and then you had a good one.
Yeah, I think it would be really helpful, to have information go out to the community about what people do in the school. And so maybe highlight a staff member once a month and an article goes out about what they do, you know, so they know what, like, student support services do and who's doing it. And they know about, you know, some after-school thing or the sports or, and then just talk about the program. Because there are a lot of things that happen in the school that aren't obvious, like sports, that provide support for kids. And people really don't know all the things that the school does.
Right.
You could have something about the food service and health services, and schools are becoming like the new source of complete family support in other places.
Okay. Good. Anything? All right, so what we're gonna do next is we're gonna actually break up into committees. Some of you serve on multiple committees, and so that makes it a little bit difficult. However, I've assigned you to the committee you're gonna work on tonight, so that makes it a little easier for you. And what I did earlier, and you don't have to use it, but with the committee chairs, I sent a planning doc. So you're gonna have quite a bit of time with your committee to talk about what are your priorities and goals for the year as a committee, and literally start to break it down by month as to tasks you could get accomplished. Talking with me and Jill, we thought this might provide just some really good opportunity to get ducks in a row and start the year off running for some elongated time, and then we'll come back and share those out. So Jim and Jill, you two are gonna work on policy. So you can spread out, go get comfy chairs, go get another cookie. And you're gonna have about 40 minutes to do it. So you'll have plenty of time. Jill has that document, and I think you can share it with Jim too. And then once you're done with those documents, we will put them in PDF form up on the website. So just as a public relations, you can't change it after that, just so you know. The operations committee will be Tim, Jake, and Casey. So Jake and Casey, why don't you guys roll on up right up to the computer, and Tim can just be there right in front of you. Does that work for you, Tim?
I found that also if one of you just calls
Maybe-
him on your cell phone, that's a
Yeah.
good way, of, like
can
actually,
do that
that
too.
way he doesn't have to, we don't all hear Tim's voice.
Or we can mute Tim there, and one of you could just pull it up on your
Yeah.
on your
either
computer.
Yeah.
And then equity engagement will be Mia, Rhett, and Lynn together. So does that work? So for 40 minutes, the 40 minutes or so, talk about your priorities. The chairs have a note-taking doc if you want to use it. You certainly don't have to use it. It was just something to organize your thinking for this. And so the goals would be to talk about what your goals for the year are, and then even think about task development per month. Does that make sense?
And can I just add a couple of things? So the superintendent eval committee is not doing this because our process is pretty well laid out with the schedule of Libby's eval. No, there might be, there's like a check-in midway through the year, et cetera. So that's why we're not meeting here. And we wanted, all of those people are also on other committees. So we wanted to give them a chance to be with those committees. And then if you are thinking about like, what would our goals for the year be, and you want to relate them back to things we've already discussed just now in this meeting, I was taking notes, so you could, like, I don't know, operations committee, if you wanted something from this, from the discussion we've already had so far, just let me know, and I'll share my notes with you.
And each of those planning docs, I have linked what I perceive to be helpful documents to you. So I linked the VSBA audit to the policy doc. I linked the facilities report
Thank you.
to the operations and something else too, I think. Oh, Andrew's FY 26 priorities that he made before he left. I linked the family survey to the engagement thing, so you have things to look back on. So go ahead, I'm gonna stop talking. I'll come around, call me over if you need me. And I'll peek around to you as well.
Brett, why don't we come over here to Lynn? We can gather around you.
Tim, I believe Jake is trying to call you right now. There you go. Can you go to the park? Go play
I'm
soccer.
grabbing that one so I can explain this one, or Lynn can sit this way, or whatever.
Can you get by? Maybe not.
Not working. You have the plan yet?
No, I only shared it with you. So if you can't share it, I will.
Yeah.
Should I?
Got it. Got it.
Do you see it?
Yep.
Cause I wasn't sure if if you wanted to use it or not, and I didn't want to confuse people and all that kind of stuff, but I think you can share it with them, cause you should be an editor.
I'm disappointed. I will take it. Okay, I got those silent cabinets. I took 2 of them home, Jim. Okay. What we do with all the children, you guys can.
All right.
I think I should let my 8-year-old know. Or maybe you should get in trouble at home. Watch out. Right.
The meeting for Monday. We had some of these,
Yep.
Yeah.
did some of this work on Monday.
Yeah, what we have, I don't know if you're gonna start looking at and really it's done.
There's some fun things that can be done in this space. That's a different space, Casey, when it was. Our goals, what are our goals, Tim? Shoot. Yeah.
Oh, I've got to send that. That doodle is on my list to do.
So.
Libby's
we do
right,
have- So we work from that sort of.
Awesome.
Okay. We worked from that like full.
Yeah.
Of these are all the.
So a little hard to swallow it over.
And.
We
the
just diet of like,
conversation
and I don't know.
that they came up
Yeah,
with
really what we did. was good.
for priorities.
We had a lot of family.
One of them was the community conversation. Whether you do that with administrative support or not, is something we want to prioritize. Co-creating, technical fundraising program for our sports team and our.
That's what happens sometimes.
That's another.
Fitting things in. Was there-
Facilitate and project manage the engagement work of the board. So as I've. That engagement work being out in the community, what are the places where we do this? And since.
I'm thankful to live in my family.
Four of us.
Takes one of those things off the table.
Kind of us. It's basically, we come up with, here's the place to be. And we share it with the board, and we're like, all right, who's volunteering? And who's going to who's gonna be at open house at MSM on October 10th?
we're gonna have their ordinance, who wants it? Who's gonna go to the senior center in November, who's gonna go to the Roxbury library? So anyway, we will come up with what that schedule is, and then we're going to volunteer for files. So that, and then the fourth one is we're taking those to dated discrepancies with Jessica and Nick before we get board presentation. So this was an idea actually back in the spring when we met with her and Jess.
That's what I got to offer.
But this is kind of like the way the operations committee looks at quarterly financial statements before the board. Those before we bring them to the full board. We,
Yeah.
as the, equity and business committee, we're looking at our student data. Bringing it from there, we're looking at where the discrepancies are.
Struck me from that was how crappy the curriculum that
Better
really does
understand
look.
with our administrators.
Like next
So
time,
before we
buy,
vote.
it's like, yeah,
So
it's
maybe
all
we
around
can
it.
help administrators
It just
to
looks
talk
kind of
about it,
shabby.
or maybe we can.
So I'm trying to
be the
see,
first wave of.
help me figure out a way that we could get grants to.
Those are our 4 priorities
to get like.
that we came up with on Monday.
Repair that.
From
How
that
it's gonna work, but
larger list.
there may be some like
Recognizing
matches
that
or
if we try to
something.
do it all, we're not
Build
gonna
up there, so who's gonna
get.
look good.
So we had to deprioritize other
That's
things.
it.
I guess one other piece of context is. I had, creating a board orientation packet and process on the list, and it was something that I thought would be great for us to do. So the board organization, like in for new board members, orientation,
There's things that.
Casey, as our newest board member, was like,
That
you know,
maybe could.
I feel like I've been going
Use
pretty well, now
fundraising
that's
that
just
we
one
could
person's
try and-
opinion, but. Her point was, maybe that doesn't need to be on the priority list.
Also, you know,
Maybe
we
we
had
have
to
to
help
go later,
that stuff.
these other things seem like higher priority.
Investigated.
So,
I don't know, like.
Yeah.
I think Larry's where we could value add here, that was one maybe I thought, we could investigate with them and folks like.
Here's what that means. Did you just open that, what we would do?
Who has been doing just a backup there?
What's this group called? Preservation. Trust.
So what I'm gonna do is move those into that document.
I think he's also on the city council.
The one that will be shared with us at the active in the.
And parent.
And then it's work plan.
I'm sure they're right.
Yeah, my kids are federation.
Where's that?
Yeah, there's a lot of.
The elbow of the children.
A lot of talent out there, it's just kind of, if we think, if there are specific goals, like I just saw the cupola and I've got coffee with Ben was talking about, it, but that might not be the thing to do. So
Right,
I kind of
so I
was
feel
wondering
good on where we landed on Monday with those 4 priorities, and
what
right now
areas
I'm
that
in
you're
that
like,
work plan document, and I'm putting those 4 priorities into
I don't think we
the.
had like, we have more money on the. Or something like that, we can do it like with a grant or anything. Maybe there's an area where we can plug in there.
It's amendments, not just the priorities of what should be done.
And then I know that she feels very passionately about the successful or equitable fundraising there, but that's what we think it's a good idea. You know, the way I said it on Monday, I feel like the board and record more people go sit out here and doing it well. Ultimately, we don't know exactly what will come of it, but I think it's going to be job. As I said on Monday, to me, it feels like it's really, like we're actually doing something rather than just talking about. So
Seems pretty good.
definitely worth it. And what I mean is, we don't know what will come of it is. Will we have that one? Will we have booster clubs and caregiver groups or like? No way, no, no, we wanna do our own thing, you know, who knows, but.
Things like
I mean, I
that.
think whatever.
Whether it's investing money in a different way, it's. Something I want.
Yeah.
Kind of
Well, with
one of the things to the point of like what kind of trainings we need to use.
Correct.
I find the worthy financial reports. But I'm not sure. Like, I wonder if you got. Or. I don't understand like
goals or.
Yeah, I know, okay, okay.
And this fourth one is that idea that you raised when we were meeting with you and Jess in the spring. And I wanted to make sure I'm actually capturing it.
Oh, yeah, I think that, I personally think that's a good idea. Yeah, it made, I would take the people names out of it.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, but, administrative, it would just be like the, right, going through.
Yeah,
the
it sounds like
audit
a
report,
connection
and
with
going through the
unstable
quarterly report and like that.
Right,
Okay, right?
great, okay.
I just turned off our camera.
I think I would also say post community conversation. I'm not sure that they're,
We just turned off our.
we want. They don't necessarily have to be anti-racism or about the equity plan. So we can.
That's not fair. Did someone say something?
Well, this one is,
It wasn't good, but.
We're now switching on the school Wi-Fi.
Parents come into the schools if their kids are doing. something. That's when parents come into the school. If the kids aren't doing anything, that's something they're really interested in, then they'll come. That's what I've learned over the years I've done it. So if kids are there. parents come.
when you come into the school, what do you picture? You mean for like events or do you mean for like?
And you're one of those guys still on the one thing.
Well, I wasn't thinking for kids to be able to go to school, they should have been taught to do something like that.
Right.
But I'm thinking, what are some ways that we can invite people in community? I mean, I know. people do stuff, but
Yeah.
But both, both of them.
But.
But, are there other ways that we can get?
Like getting a fresh take from the new finance director on, strengths basis, and is stuff like that.
Help people become more familiar with that.
What do you guys think?
I feel like this number full free should go out. Curious about their vision for the kind of.
Yeah.
I also
Because,
think it might be helpful to have.
Movement of money from the capital fund, because, if it feels like we, approval for that. The question is like, what kind of project we are going to use for it, how or we have to. I don't know what we're going to design or something, there must be events of some kind of. There must be events.
There's a meal, I think that is the one thing to have,
It's like,
Which we used to serve at.
what people are.
oh, we did?
Sign,
You should do that,
it's
yeah.
also the.
Around better
they're-
events.
they're the-
It's like the most fun. Then when COVID started, then COVID had been open up for a few years and we
That's
just
I'm
never
hoping that
started it up again. We had two last year.
Like I'm hoping that Tom takes the lead on that, and then we're,
There's a,
maybe
there's a.
narrows it to a couple things. Then kind of maybe ask for
They
feedback.
happen now.
Once he gets to like, hey, these are big business wise
School, I thought it was those.
organizers, but I don't want to, at least in the first instance, defer to the administration on that.
Yeah, I would agree, it's kind of like. To me, it's like.
No, I think we're starting to get
Follow
into
through on that.
what the tasks are. Yeah.
Um,
Before we walk away, I wanted to just clarify, I shared with them what you and I talked about as far as like those evening community conversations.
Yeah, that's probably.
And we had some ideas like, spread them out so that they're not, maybe they happen quarterly. Maybe what we do is we get asked for consultation, but then.
Setting up the structure.
Administrative done a feel. So we're like some creative ideas for how to continue doing them without asking too much of administration. So.
Yeah, it's the last, I didn't go with the last one, but when before that, it was a little pretty far back.
Yeah.
People feel they don't do it. I don't know where it is.
Yeah, we should have to keep in mind that we're talking about people who get to work at 7 in the morning.
Yeah.
And,
Exactly right.
and, you know, if you're not
That's
leaving
what
it,
we were.
that's a long day.
We were wondering about that's something that we were wondering about, and how the most explanation, creating templates that things that are developed with just a team member and then we are able to facilitate based on the template without necessarily leaving.
And not going over community leaders or the caregivers.
That's the other thing I want you all to consider too, is that you all spend a lot of time in board meetings. And so, like, it's not your role, like, how can you use other places like the wonderful pie organization you have arm of outreach? Because you, I've seen the board over at 7 South before, and it's not a pretty picture, right? It is hard, it is hard, so just keep that in mind as well.
Great.
So,
Yeah.
So it might be develop a better partnership with MRPSI. Or develop a partnership, develop a partnership with MRPS Pi and how to, you know, engage caregivers in different ways or something like that.
And also maybe like if it's years when, I mean, I don't know if this, I'm sure this next year's not looking great actually with the, buying down the rates, but like, also just making sure we're being opportunistic and like, maybe it's like a good year, maybe that's a year kind of the contribution to capital funds.
There's a couple of farming.
Keep rates sort of
So look
steady.
at,
Also maintain.
that timeline.
Yeah. Well, we know to go out and bond for another like little, like $2-3 million bond for plugging the things that we have up here now already. And
Yeah, well, FY 27 is not gonna be. a multi-year.
yeah.
Sure.
I think data discrepancy sounds like there's something.
Yeah, also the creative fundraising, everything about for things that.
I don't know, like, what we want to get at.
There's a word actually that.
Yeah.
One of the things is just like.
What's the D word? That has to do with.
Difference, differentiate,
I think that's it, data differentiation, no? When there's.
segregation.
Well, that's where you separate the data, but then when you see that there might be.
Well, not, no, it's not, but there's
I don't know that I.
differences in the results for certain.
Right.
Opportunity gap.
It was the thing we got a training on at this meeting
Yeah.
last year.
There's the opportunity gap, and that's, well, now you're messing me up with it.
What's the like instead of us having.
It's like percentages.
Now you're messing me up because I'm trying to think of it.
Yeah, I
If
know.
it's a
like
D,
Trying to think of a song while listening to it.
hold on.
What's happening?
Well, at some point.
Yeah, I heard so. So here's what I'm gonna do is like I said, we started this one on, I'm gonna. Move these things into the.
Yeah. Maybe that's a,
Well, you're.
just looking at this, this document that can be sent to me.
I think the most
Do you guys have
important thing.
operations paper?
Yeah, that's me too.
Kind of fill it out, maybe in September.
Some planning to figure out if we're gonna have someone to do it.
Sort of refresh on,
What we're gonna do it.
on
So we're
facility
going to
plan.
do it quarterly, we could get the date up there.
And
Yeah.
how
With
we,
the topic.
last year's plan. So. You. Last year's plan and sure challenge report. Sounds good. Thanks.
Right now.
You're welcome.
I'm doing What we had in our draft calendar, this one, that moved.
that
Um,
is still very, I'm
Yeah,
moving all the
pretty bad.
And then we go looking at, you can look at it as a family app and you can.
Giving us the first order, so.
What then who would bring it?
What's that?
The new finance director. who would bring it?
Wait till you meet him. I've met him.
What's his name?
Mike Concessi.
Oh, I know that guy.
You do? I bet you do. Does he
Yeah.
agree to you?
Was it you?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. I think he's like a interesting kind of unique figure.
Yeah.
But I don't know his name.
He is like stereotype New York Italian.
Yeah.
Like, so picture Christina, who is very kind of very quiet, and I feel like you got this. Mike is like overconfident and loud. It's like completely different. Huh? Our new chief financial officer.
Right.
Yeah, he replaced her at Caledonia Central, and now he's replacing her here. Yeah. I'm just looking up for you guys though, because I heard you guys talk about the quarter report. So if you look at
Yeah, that's fine.
last year, you got a quarter one report in November.
Oh, okay. Did you hear that thing? Q1 report may come from November.
It's the first board meeting of November. And then you got a quarter two report in February. And these aren't exact dates, but you can say around this time, you'll get them. And then you got a quarter three report in April. And then the quarter four report is always part of the audit. So it's like that. And Mike might do those differently. I don't know how he does them. But if there's changes you want, then this is a good opportunity for you to talk about it with him.
Well, maybe we can do that. Ask in October.
Throwing out what good would look like. If
Kind of
you
keep them
had
going
two
for the
focus
morning
areas.
reporting that we had before, see if he has suggestions, maybe have that conversation.
Yeah.
In advance the first one.
Cause those are reports for you, so ask for what you want. Yeah, he does. What's he need? I don't think he lives over in West Central somewhere.
Ground or somewhere around there.
Might be Halleck in my head, but I could be wrong. He coaches at Eastern too, so it's more local here.
Maybe. What's the timing of the data presentation? We get one in November or December? The first one of the school year.
No, you get one. Last year, you got one in October.
Oh,
You get the fall report in October.
okay.
And then you get then another one came in January.
Right.
End of January, early February, because we split up the academics and SEL sometimes
That's
to
right.
two different meetings for you. And then the spring one is always gonna be the last board meeting of the year, just because of when we give that assessment.
It's like, September last year.
We're trying to, not overextend ourselves.
Last year, you guys got facility state of the state in September, the second September meeting.
Of these four. So these are. four
I
of
think
us.
I'm gonna switch that up a little bit too, so tell me what you want. It's wonderful.
I think what I'm putting
Not
in
one of
here
those, so I think.
proposals
I will
for
be doing
how
that.
that would
On
look.
there to ask questions, so
And
if you
you're
want
going
something.
particular. I mean.
Plan was that?
The facility plan for the board presentation.
Okay.
Yeah, so if there's something you really want in that presentation, then just let me know.
Yeah. Are we talking like December?
And what way are we
We wanna have like a. This is all, there's a lot of.
Why don't I keep doing this, just leave it all right out there, we can, like, yeah. Could start to think about that,
Budget development season.
but I think it would be
So, yeah.
related to the stuff that's in our board indicators, right?
We wanna
Around the academic.
involve ourselves
data.
like it's like a. Like an early sounding board budget, or offer that.
Yeah, I propose.
What would that like in terms of like history? Kind of so like, wow. Like there another budget being there any time ago.
Everything. Like November, December, we're getting a budget, right? Draft budget.
Yeah, first draft budget is the first. First draft budget is the first December meeting every year.
Okay. Is there anything helpful that the operations committee can do for in budget planning? Or increase rates or-
Well, for me, again, it's, like you, all of you have had, except for Casey, have had multiple years now, budget presentations, like one possible and that's. Generally follow very.
We don't have the
similar
location
here.
I think the next thing to do is
So if
assign
there's
a
a thing
location.
you need more in those presentations or less of, then just let me know beforehand.
So the community consultations are the
Time
ones
to
that.
have that conversation.
Oh, yeah, it's good. Probably
We're at-
in October.
We're at-
early November.
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, with a new financial officer coming in too, I don't know what he like, you know, just in his interview alone, he had some ideas that we hadn't done before, so.
Right. Maybe in October, that's the focus, and I can like. Go over like financial reporting and budgeting.
Yeah.
In February, we should do something.
Yeah, no,
Yeah. Circle back to well, I mean, do all this in October, like, cause it was your point, Jake, that like by November, we're already kind of late for getting into the capital fund conversation.
No, I don't think that's any of my point. We're gonna stick with it.
I think the challenge with talking about the capital fund in November is that you're getting into budget season. And that, I think the capital fund conversation is big. And how to spend it.
I think we follow after Tom's. facilities
I'm just
plan,
thinking
right?
like, let's get it all in one
Good,
place.
yeah.
Okay. Collect and summarize.
And we wouldn't need that for the, I mean, we kind of have that alongside because we wouldn't need to budget for it, since we'd have,
Right,
we already have the money,
you've already moved it over.
yeah.
So, you know, and I know. Big projects need to be going out to bid in December-ish, January, maybe November, that time.
Okay, yeah, we're moving on along.
If we wanna get a good bid, we gotta go out in November for the summer.
And we'll start talking about that with Tom's facility report.
Yeah,
So I think November, maybe we can put Q1 report and, capital funds, conversation about, keep it vague. maybe a task
I'm
force
like,
trying
thinking
to
about how much I'm gonna
identify
do that. I'm like,
specific uses.
don't overpromise.
Only a PDF because.
No, I get it.
Yeah.
And then both of them. Big topic. Or a plan for the-
Public document, that would be a little, maybe just keep it like identify specific uses.
Even one of them.
Like, what do you do?
Probably have a conversation with them first, everybody will be done with them.
So we want to do it in the year. I guess January is pretty budget.
I think something for you all to keep in mind, but not near and dear to the heart, but what's happening in the legislature, we're gonna have community engagement on. If they decide anything like redistricting, which is a big if. But if they do, that's coming out in December.
We have community engagement, board member listening session. For, you could say instead of it being like a office hours kind of thing, it's more community forum about. But maybe we would want that in January, not in December. It's being released, like, released.
It's supposed to be being released in December, and they're not gonna do anything with it, so when most people really start in January.
Yeah.
You could invite a representative.
I'd be happy to do that again.
I'm just thinking timing wise, January might make more sense than December.
Yeah, but people should, like, holidays.
So I'm gonna try, board engagement, board,
So maybe January is background
and it's a community forum.
spending. State level.
Statewide education. Changes. What did we just replace that with? It was a listening session. Okay, or kind of open house. We got those on the
Part
board.
of the report is take up the bulk of like 4 meetings
Yeah.
and then talking to the board. So facilities director, the bulk of another 4 meetings.
What else was going on, Jake, like at the facilities committee? Like outside of the, the fall report? And where would you want to plug that in?
We just talked about how we went to.
You still have money for it. Yeah.
That's March.
Well,
That was
February.
beginning of March, yeah.
Mike's first act.
Well, it's so early.
You'll spend a long time on that. February, so move it from the listening session to being a project committee forum. Whoever's doing it. I see it, yeah. Okay, so.
To, the former facilities guy. Andrew. Every couple months, every month or two.
Awesome.
Really, we're just like, asking a bunch of questions about things. I think we could do like the lab, in the lab.
I think what Andrew wished was to have more direction. It's a lot of money to spend, that's right. There's a lot of money to spend.
I did read your book.
More conversations about.
Kept it under my breath.
Yeah.
That probably would be a good investment of my time. Particularly in this, although it could be part of the state of affairs right now. I think, and before your time, before COVID, it would be interesting to go and what do we do with that building? That was a facility we talked about all the time.
Well, some of these we should really also.
I mean,
Yeah, because, yeah.
if you guys want that
we're
kind
gonna
of-
have Stuff that shouldn't
If
come
you
up
guys
here.
want that kind of feedback, I
And
think
then
we
maybe
can kind
things
of
that come up around the budget.
alternate Tom
You
off
know,
of,
if it's possible. we
you
have
know,
to
when
do
Mike's
that thing.
presenting the quarterly reports and just have like a sort of,
Mhm.
Maybe we should put
Planning.
that when.
I'd be open to that. I don't want.
Yeah, I think we might, no, you're not overstepping at all. I'm just thinking about using strength, right? And I don't know. Mike yet, 'cause I don't know very well. But my hunch is.
We'll be doing a lot of
That-
that, so we give ourselves a break.
Again, Tom knows these
but
folks inside and out,
Yeah, it does.
but things like, you know, but things like presentation and financial.
I mean, right now, all we have.
Like, that's just not his
Forum, but what we could
skill set of
instead is
it's
really
really
more.
done, other than like the day-to-day kind of stuff, and, you know, like.
Guidelines.
So I think I want my financial guy there. He is a different skill set than me. Put it that way, ready to do.
Yeah.
But I think he's gonna have to play more of a role in facilities. And
Yeah,
the
that would be
plan
really
here,
cool.
and then he can fit.
All boards we engage with.
We want Tom and Mike talking to us at the same time.
Forum and.
Yeah, together, around, so that you're clear about the money and, you know,
Okay.
Yeah.
And how often do you think that should occur? Like every time we meet, once a month?
I've had both of them there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Should we, would it be helpful in order to organize the conversation? Maybe would you have them come ready with some, like Tom, with here's like what I'm thinking that sort of long-term, mid-long-term, and I guess how would you structure that, do you think?
I think what would be the most helpful is, because there's like a give and take, right? Your responsibility to like design the agenda and things like that, so.
The
If
way
you
you
say
say
that,
that, observe it,
uh,
happening last year, is that
and the
a set
team,
amount that
we'd like to discuss the
pay
the
it.
possibilities
Yeah.
for how to use the capital plan.
No.
Throw something out there, right? Come prepared with a, we'd like a presentation on all the different thoughts you have and an approximate budget amount.
You're like that,
Because then it could be threefold, it could be, here's the money,
things.
here's the plan, or here's what we'd like to do, one thing we'd like to do. And then from my perspective, here's what I think you need to get.
Oh, they sold, like.
Is this one you gotta go to them,
So-
or is it not?
And that was all the.
Get some feedback before we make any movement, you
I
know,
think,
anything you do, that's
the way I see fundraising guidelines is that we're setting something up that will hopefully live a long time, and so let's take our time to do a.
For which case we hand it over to them.
Invested in it.
No, I think that, like, yeah, we have like
Maybe have.
October or whatever you're expecting quarter one report, but Mike knows that's Scott and John. Tom doesn't show up to that.
Or start, whatever, we're moving for it, so.
So probably be the quarter one report.
I don't wanna like put that kind of time pressure on ourselves, I think I'd rather do it in a way that's like.
Okay.
Take longer.
Jake, you got your baby shapes on, what are you thinking?
More people.
Okay. Go around, two seconds.
Based on the capital fund, like for the facilities plans, Tom's gonna have like a draft of facility plans. Or do we want him to have like some initial capital fund at just that point?
Yeah, and I've already prepped
So
him
we
for that,
have.
that kind of thinking, so. Now that the general summer is kind of winding down, which is a busy time, we'll have to get
Yeah.
there, thinking about that piece.
Okay.
How is it looking now? Here.
For the net zero stuff. So I want to know, we talked about it a lot in the past, and we found that.
Duple?
Framework for
I mean, we'll see what happens.
Tom to be able to make decisions. Down the road, like,
So they made, yeah, and what people were looking for, it was like, they were like guidelines. Do you remember that?
Okay.
It was like something like.
It's almost every writer you have, but it's not one, the idea is that we're reaching
So
out
they
to
make
board members
guidelines around that.
each time, so no
And I'm
board
gonna
member
tell you,
is doing the
like,
same
so
thing.
Andrew was always kind of putting it first. If you went along with it, we put the boards one thing. But we was always like, one thing, like, let's find. And
That's not the guy. That makes sense. to me.
yeah, instead of spending all this money to replace things that were fine.
Right.
You know, but when it's right, let's get it in good shape. Because when we were running that, Jim was talking, we were talking about electric heat pumps, or you're talking about taking out, like, one of our fields to put some sort of large device up there. It's like, which is like, we're not.
The idea is that we'll do it in advance of the
So-
board
So,
meeting,
but there is no framework.
So there's
for, like,
where we get the data
there's
from.
something that's great.
So there's a data presentation at the board meeting in
Yeah, we just
October.
don't know most energy.
That's why they're,
efficient knowledge.
right now.
Yeah.
Could you know
Yeah.
what they have?
But I'll find
Yeah,
out.
that's a great right now. Libby just.
Oh, just said that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you have it.
I'm sure it's on there.
I'm sure it's on our website somewhere. It just might be buried.
I was not suggesting we resurrect that. It's
Yeah.
Just like, I was trying to understand what might be helpful.
So as I look at the task. That's what I think about, that's what we would focus on during meeting.
Okay, so it looks like.
We would say, okay, so. In September, we want to show up at the open house, what do we need to do to be able to? You know, constantly, we need to make sure that. When you said that's okay, for us to be there, connect us with the principal, where should we set up, who's going to show up, what are we, what are we sharing, like. If we have a good idea of like, let's create a one pager of what the, what is it that, why would somebody care? To talk with a board member. So those are the kind of things we will spend meeting time on. And then. The planning, all that stuff.
I'm sharing it with you, Frida.
So the task of each month inform how we spend.
Said that we should have Tom and Mike there together. I'm wondering. I'm thinking one of the things, if we're making ourselves available, I'm guessing.
With the exception of like quarterly reports, I'll probably have them both there all the time.
I wonder. Except for quarterly reports, that.
Yeah.
They're both, that we, like, potentially, we might want. Maybe even. So having on the, so with some, how much of their costs. With a QR code on it.
Yeah, back, like.
That potentially goes to your.
Rethinking it on cadence here.
You know, having. That will be for. QR. What do you think should get more information from?
Yeah.
Website or.
Well, that, yeah, it's not useful. I don't want to like, just sort of try and build a meeting to have whatever. I'm happy to meet even more than one if we're helpful. So I guess part of me is thinking that should be one of our. That's really. I don't really know, we already had. There's like a discussion we have with Libby. Like on, that just says like. What we all think would be helpful. I mean, from my end, I think the finances are really important. We want to definitely work on maybe having a better presentation to get a better understanding of the school's finances and risks. I want to be able to assist Tom in planning. Maybe see opportunities for fundraising if there are some, but other than that, I'll have ton of objectives.
Oh, boy. Take about 5 more minutes.
So,
And we can
no, and I'm not even feeling food yet, because.
I think with you guys, if I can, it might be coming in, it's your opportunity to take a new business manager
This is what we would do for the better thing. Because I think what should happen is now, don't think that, you know, like, I've always done, yeah, exactly.
I'm wondering whether maybe some
Yeah.
of the things that it's like, one of our big goals.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
we've got operations mission,
Like, what are we looking at?
Instead of,
Why are we looking at it?
focus areas and facts for the, each month for the
What are
year.
the
I
opportunities?
was just looking to take notes on, what do we want to have that about?
I know
Something
we've got
that's
the
going
first
to
few
be
months
the
of
priorities of the board. And something that's.
I think that they're actually, they just come there.
Given that it's, maybe it's like a half pager, but.
Yeah, I don't think it's much.
And maybe that's okay, actually having it.
There's an intent to.
Timeframe, last weekend, we like,
Formula that would end local control requirements.
big campus that they got.
Nobody knows. if
What's
it's
our
happening.
goal?
Here's a QR code, there's some additional links that we have. Links to.
I would also.
Some links.
Email, people, folder people,
Right. Well, and I mean.
Anna is a master at that one, don't you worry. Anna's got it
and,
going on.
You know, we can also take people's information and send to them forms of information that they can consume, that they can readily consume. Like if somebody's like, I don't do QR codes, or I have flip phone. Well, obviously, a number, okay, we'll call it, see if we'll be able to something
Disproportionality.
It was a C word.
I just found it. I had to go back to the agenda. For that happened. You got it, Lynn.
The other thing is, you all, I
I
put in,
audio
right now, sorry.
And I travel.
I put into my calendar, I think, 4 kind of superintendent forums that are wide open of, inviting the community in, that I imagine will probably be around the legislation. That's what I'm imagining it will be around, but nothing is done.
Do you have them on a calendar yet, or you just?
You have them on a calendar.
Why don't we just note that when those are happening, it could be a thing that a board member joins for that.
maybe that they take place in one of these.
Yeah.
The first one is scheduled to be, these are written on my calendar and my calendar alone, so, September 10th.
Anything that needs to
Well, I don't want to, just stick it on the bottom of the top.
Outside of the,
Yeah, that's the.
Okay.
Oh, I have-
Scroll to the bottom and just put in.
So I have 3 of them planned. I have
Okay.
September 10th, I have February 9th, and April 6th.
Once you type, are you going?
Specific day, right?
Right before a board meeting.
We're doing, the hour before the first board meeting of the month.
We have like 10 to 10.
You guys like that?
I like that.
I like the timing.
Yeah.
I think that gives us a whole lot of opportunity.
April, what, 10th?
Sorry, Libby, what was the
Sorry.
April
You
date?
said April 10th?
And if we're inviting.
Sorry, hold on.
On there.
April 6th,
In February
9th.
9th.
You also, this, if you guys can swing it, yeah. And not make it after hours. Yeah.
That's why you do something on a Monday or a Friday.
Great.
Kind of first thing in the morning.
Mondays and Fridays are the best days. For, if you're talking during the school day.
I can generally spend Friday.
Those guys up early.
Now they're like 3:30 in the morning. Yeah. Yeah.
3:45.
Everybody. You do Friday,
The
and I
most ready for.
stay away from the second Friday, rather than the Friday at all, that's all, so with their reading. So, safe football days, I don't want to tell you about, but every other Friday.
That's another option.
So like first Friday morning at 8, 10 a.m.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, we can make that work. If you
Well,
all.
and it- yeah,
You're
you're
gonna
gonna
be
be
down.
I don't think it's
Every single.
again here by then.
Phil, I really need to do.
There's a straggler here.
Something we haven't. Nobody never anticipated could happen. So we're gonna need to.
Yeah. I can break.
That was hysterical. No, Libby, no. I love it.
Temporary.
I love it.
Ready to wrap up?
Okay, let's finish up your thought. Actually, I'm just looking at the time. And we're not gonna actually share out, but we can share these with each other. Everybody's interested. Was that helpful to have time to think?
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good.
I just said to Lynn, this is the
Feels about ready to
most,
fall asleep.
Like,
Like-
that's spreading the whole world.
You're like, let's hurry it up, Lib, hurry up.
No, so you want us to do like another half an hour pair and share?
Yeah, when you.
What you're saying?
did it, and I'm like,
Right, Jill. All right, so policy monitoring, I mean, I'll take your job, I'm gonna take your job. There is food that's getting packed up right now for everybody too.
Great. Yeah. So I think we can hang up on Tim there and bring him back on the Zoom. Great. Welcome back to the main room, Tim, from your breakout room. Yeah, so we've got some policy monitoring reports. A1, A20, and F20. Board member conflict of interest, board meetings, agenda preparation and distribution, and fiscal management. I'm gonna suggest we do all three at once. And then if somebody wants to pull one off, we can. So is there a motion to approve the policy monitoring reports? Is there a second? Okay. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor? Any opposed? All right, and with that, I don't think we had anything that we added to the agenda. Motion to adjourn? Yes,
I
and
have access to all of them, so I'll make sure that get
Libby
where it
can
needs to
make
be,
it
and Anna does as well.
so that we can view it, but not edit it, because we should not be editing Google Docs outside of meetings. Yes. People should, yeah, we should share that. Okay, is there a motion to adjourn? I was gonna say, Jill, you want the honors? Is there a second? Good. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes. Good night, everyone.